of what's happening, you'll know that we had some 30 Cubans, I think it's 29 Cubans, arrive on our shores. So, extremely interesting, without a doubt. But a lot of people are kind of wondering if there's something else afoot here. And I gotta tell you, part of me is kind of like, I understand the desperation with the Cuban situation. And, I'm very, very sympathetic to their plight. But at the same time, I could understand why some people might actually think that there's much more to this. Well, people are telling me listen, I don't know. I'm certainly not in the know on this one, but people are saying to me that without a doubt, there is something amiss here. And I thought, really? And they said, yes, Sandy. So I said, I don't have any evidence of it, but we're certainly going to talk about it. So good morning to Diamond Princess. She says, wet Monday morning to all. Good morning to Felicia. It's actually look like it's clearing up weather-wise. So we will certainly keep an eye on the weather. Let me just send out the links to our WhatsApp group, who are also tuned in. So thank you once again for your patience this morning. Sometimes, technical things do happen. So a couple of things that I definitely want us to just send out the links to. Sorry for the WhatsApp feedback. Group. Just had to grab that Facebook link. All right. So Andy, good morning. Let's go ahead and jump into the conversation, folks. So first of all, we had just about 30 Cubans arrive in our shores between Friday and today. And so it's been a very, very busy weekend for Cayman Brac in particular. And, what can I say except that they're going to be processed. And, someone said that they are of the belief, and again, this is not something that I have any confirmation of, but they have sources that are telling them that apparently the Cuban nationals who are arriving here are being assisted. And so the thinking is, and this is what I'm being told, and again, I have no evidence of this, but this is what people are saying, is that they are being brought halfway by a larger vessel, and then they're being dropped off in this little inky dinky boat so that they can make the rest of the journey. I mean, it sounds a bit far-fetched, but sometimes some of the most far-fetched things actually do happen. So I don't know, but here's part of the group that came in on Saturday morning, and everyone says they look so fresh and they're so well put together. I must tell you, they do look really good. So for those of you who are listening on radio, they're wearing nice T-shirts and all wearing nice sneakers. One guy, he's even color coding his sneakers. He's got red sneakers with his red and white shirt. They do look pretty fresh. And this picture that was taken is of them with their mask on. So I guess they know to travel with their mask, which is good. At least they're complying with that one. And so, this is as they came off of their boat, the person's yard in the Brac that they arrived on snapped this photo of them, and they look pretty happy. They all given a thumbs up in the photo, and they look extremely happy to have arrived safely. So there is this. I've had multiple people, in fact, say to me over the weekend that they have sources coming out of Cuba that is actually informing them that we are now the destination of choice, in the sense that, we are going to at least take care of them until they can be repatriated. And a lot of them do apply for political asylum. And I guess some of them are successful, because we have some here that, to be quite frank and honest, are very undesirables, because they have demonstrated that they have no regard for our laws or anything else. And they have a certain expectation of what they will be given. You would have thought that someone who's left Cuba under those circumstances would come here with a very different attitude. But some of the refugees that we've seen, again, they've been granted asylum. They want to be able to bring all sorts of other people along, and it's just they've commandeered a ship in Cayman waters. Was that last year? So they've demonstrated, at least some of them. I always think it's the few bad apples that make everybody look bad, right? And they have certainly demonstrated a different attitude that a lot of us are not entirely looking at with a favorable eye. So is this a new trend? Well, I mean, 30 people in one weekend seems like a lot, but we also know that given the current situation as it relates to just coronavirus and what people are enduring. I mean, the United States of America, and I was actually listening to this on just Friday, they're also experiencing a surge in Cuban refugees coming through the southern borders. So we talked about this a couple months back, how they actually go through Nicaragua, because last year Nicaragua actually decided to open their country where Cuban nationals no longer require any sort of a visa. They can simply just hop on and go into the country, and they're now using that as an access point to try to get through to the United States of America. So they have seen a tremendous influx in their numbers as well, and they are watching the numbers. So just a quick traffic update here, folks. If you're still stuck in traffic, you're going to be delayed this morning because there has been an accident that is just reported on the Linford Pearson Highway, just as you are about to turn to Jose's gas station. So I forget what that little road is called, but that's where the accident is this morning, folks. So take your time, take your time. It looks like at least two vehicles looks like they ran into each other at that little roundabout there. So we encourage you to take your time, because if you were in a hurry this morning, rest assured you will now be delayed even more. So, yes, there you go. If you have an option, I suppose, not to take the Linford Pearson Highway at this junction, then turn and go to Crew Road if you can. All right, folks. So yeah, so the Cuban situation is very, very interesting. Some people are saying that this is human trafficking, and I don't really know for sure that that's the case, but I do know that when they come here, they get free housing. From a humanitarian perspective, I think the Cayman Islands government does a good job of taking care of them. They're getting food vouchers, they're getting NAU assistance, and I believe that they're getting assistance with some employment opportunities as well while their applications are being processed. Now, my sources have said, and I'm going to just tell you what, listen, I'm selling it to you as cheap as I got it, that in Cuba, and this would not be necessarily something that would surprise me, that there are ways to get documentation and stories pretty much fabricated to make it look like you qualify for political asylum when in fact you're just an average Cuban. Because remember, most of the people, I mean, listen, I would say 99.99999% of the people who are running from Cuba, it has nothing to do with political asylum. It is more of an economic asylum situation where they're just running from a bad economy, right? And that means that they're looking for brighter opportunities somewhere else, and those opportunities could be here in the Cayman Islands as well as they could be in the United States of America. Now, most Cubans will tell you that they want to get into the US because that's kind of seen as the holy grail. And it's so interesting that when I was listening to the NPR show, I think it was on Friday, one of the sentiments that was being expressed was the fact that this lady called in, and it sounded very sort of xenophobic, but I understood part of what she was saying in any event. That essentially, she was like, well, why can't we get the better quality Cubans coming through? And I kind of laughed because I thought, I don't think you have a choice when migrants leave their country. Like, who's going to leave? Right. And a lot of times you don't get the best of the best. What you get is essentially what you get. And so you have a lot of people who, like this woman, she's like, why can't we get the doctors? Cuba always talking about what great doctors that they have. And she thought, well, that would be really nice if we could get some of those individuals. It would be nice, but like I said, that isn't exactly how it works, right? So we don't have a choice. in who we get. And people will leave their country for better opportunities. I am sympathetic towards the plight because, again, I want to remind you guys that I have lived in someone else's country. And so I understand to some extent what's happening. So, again, we go back to even the Washington Post has covered the story, saying that Cuban nationals, Cuban migrants are arriving in the US in the highest numbers since the 1980 Mariel boat lift. Now, a lot of us might be too young to remember that. I have certainly heard of it, but I don't have any recollections because I would have been a young child at the time. I don't really have any recollections of like news coverage or anything. But last month, which would have been the month of March, 32,000 Cubans were taken into US custody along the Mexican border. And that is double the number that arrived in February. So I think the trend, and this is what I want to stress, is I don't know that there's necessarily there's necessarily conspiracy or that there's human trafficking. I think the trend is as conditions worsen in Cuba because of the pandemic and because of economic stresses, you will find that Cuban people will want to leave their country even more than they, wanted to leave before. And quite frankly, the economy in Cuba is really, really dismal. So you see the numbers pushing up in the United States of America, and we can expect migrants to be taking the chance and traversing across the waters. And, also, quite frankly, more will show up on the shores here in the Cayman Islands. So Cayman Brac gets most of them, it appears. Um, in the case of the US, they're arriving through the southern land border, not necessarily by sea. So, again, that particular situation is being fueled by the fact that Nicaragua has allowed Cuban nationals to fly into the country after it dropped all of its visa requirements last fall. So, it has become a lot easier, and it really has cut off thousands of miles of the journey for people who are trying to enter the US illegally from Cuba. So they just make that journey. And this one person says that there's an exodus from Cuba as a stampede to Managua, Managua, of course, being in Nicaragua, and that's their capital country, city, right? So this lady who's Cuban, Maria Gonzalez, who arrived in Miami recently with her husband and two children, said that almost everyone from the younger generations is leaving. So definitely a Cuban migration boom. And of course, President Biden is having to deal with this. And CBP in the US has arrested numerous people along the border. And they have reached a record 1.73 million during the 2021 fiscal year. And that year's total is on pace, this year's total, my apologies, is on pace to being higher. Wow. That's a lot of people. Mm, mm, mm. So it says here that the arrival of so many Cubans is straining communities in South Florida, while acting once more as a release valve for communist authorities facing potential unrest amid the worst economic crises to grip the islands in decades. So this is what it comes down to, folks. It's all about economies, right? And so there is a Cuban historian. We should probably try to reach out to him at the University of Miami. And he says that the migration surge is really putting extreme pressure on the Biden administration to recast its strategy. And of course, the Trump administration has left aspects of what they call maximum pressure approach, which essentially just tighten the US economic sanctions. So, one possible solution, I want you guys to tell me what you think about this. Give us a call on 936-2626. One possible solution is for the US to lift sanctions that are now currently on the Cuban people. So, by the lifting of sanctions, the theory is it will be easier to get goods and other services and get the economy going in the in the island nation of Cuba. And by extension, that could ease the pressure to try to leave the country. So it's so interesting how a lot of this really falls on, well, some of it, I should say, really falls on the shoulder of US policymakers. And, the argument there is that the current maximum pressure approach doesn't work and that it's not a win for the US. And it's also not a win for the Cuban people. But then the question becomes, what about the Cuban government? Because the Cuban government, of course, is the reason why the sanctions are placed against the people of of Cuba, right? The government is to blame. But how much can be done about the Cuban government? Well, I don't really know, and so I guess we sit back and we wait and see. Hmm. And lots of listen. There's a lot of discrimination that happens in this entire process. Cubans who cross the border illegally face little risk of being deported or expelled under the Title 42 public health law that the US authorities used to return thousands of Haitians from a camp last September. So, again, Haitian nationals are treated very, very differently than Cuban nationals when it comes to illegal migration. And so that is also one of the topics that comes, sort of a subtopic that comes out of this as well. So ICE has deported only 20 Cubans in the past 5 months and just 95 during 2021. And in 2020, they deported a total of 1,583 Cubans. So the chances are, let's be very, very honest, the chances of you not getting deported and being able to remain in Miami or anywhere in the US for that matter are actually pretty good. And so you take that chance. You will take a chance of losing your life potentially, because I think a lot of people do make it, as we can see from the numbers, right? So here's a little bit of information about the Mariel boat lift back in 1980. 125,000 Cubans arrived during that time, when the island's ports and marinas were open to allow US vessels to basically pick up anyone wanting to leave. And another 30,000 people reached the United States across the Florida Straits during the 1994 rafter crisis. That one I remember a little bit better. Um, so the US has been trying to increase family reunification visas, which is a special category open to Cuban nationals in particular, and a visa lottery system, which would allow 20,000 Cubans to legally immigrate on an annual basis. But those legal pathways, again, seem to be crippled by the State Department in the US, which removed the consular staff from Cuba in 2017 after the unexplained health incidents. You guys might remember this or not, but American CIA agents and others were experiencing what they call the Havana syndrome, where basically they were having all sorts of debilitating physical symptoms that they couldn't really put their hands on, like this was the cause, but they thought, quite interestingly enough, that Russian agents might have been responsible for what was a years long series of mysterious illnesses. So, very, very interesting. And I remember reading about this back then. I thought, this is so bizarre. But a senior CIA official stressed that the agent's investigation is still continuing because, again, it was so unusual that they couldn't quite put their finger on exactly what was causing it. But people were showing up with very unusual, they were presenting themselves with very unusual symptoms. And for the most part, it was people at the US Embassy. They were the first ones to report unexplained physical symptoms back in 2017. Huh. So they had more than 1,000 cases of what has been termed anomalous health incidents. So otherwise healthy people were experiencing dizziness and headaches at the US Embassy in Havana. Hmm. And sensations such as ringing in the ears, which has now been commonly coined as the Havana syndrome, And, it was mostly the intelligence, diplomatic, and military personnel that were experiencing this um, there. And quite interestingly enough, it has been reported in other places as well. So the majority of cases, they say, might have been some sort of environmental factor, but a few dozen of them cannot be explained, and they're still continuing to investigate those. So as a result of that, the US pulled out a lot of their employees out of Cuba. So, yeah, very, very unusual situation there. So that has now in turn hampered ongoing efforts to try to put processes in place that will allow Cuban nationals to be able to leave Cuba legally. Hmm. Mhm. And of course, the families of some of these individuals, CIA agents and others, are having to seek compensation from the US government. And just 6 months ago, the Biden administration signed, well, in October, what is being called the Havana Act, which gives him 6 months to establish a framework for paying payments to these individuals who suffered whatever this is, these medical incidents. But again, it's a very unusual and a very unusual particular situation that has happened in Cuba. So, consular staff was removed by the State Department back in 2017, and Cubans now find themselves having to travel to Guyana, for example, for visa processing as opposed to having it done right in Cuba. And that again, there's a backlog. It's going to slow down the entire process. And they have said, the US Embassy in Havana has said that they're preparing to restart limited consular services in May, so next month, but only for parents of US citizens. So they will give those individuals priority. So, there is that pathway for legally entering the US, but it is laborious, it is time consuming, and most people find that it's just easier to jump on a little boat and take matters into your own hands and or jump on a plane to Nicaragua. And then what they do is, in addition to going through Nicaragua, Cubans are also flying through Panama and other jurisdictions. Now, you guys remember they were also using Jamaica as a route, and Jamaica quickly put a stop to it. Jamaica said, "Hold on, not today, Bobo." You guys remember this impacted even us here in the Cayman Islands. So, folks, this is why you've got to pay attention to international affairs and regional affairs because, it all has an impact on all of us. And of course, when Jamaica said um, they were not going to allow Cubans to come in, because in fact, they were coming on Cayman Airways. They were using our national airline um, to get into Jamaica, and then they were going from Jamaica to other countries. And Jamaica said, no, 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 no. We are not going to allow this any longer. Jamaica said, we're going to put a stop to this. And so Jamaica had abruptly denied Cayman Airways the ability to have any Cubans land. And Cuba then, by extension, tried to punish us. You guys remember this, right? This was just a couple months ago. So the Cuban government said, well, if that flight can't come with, I forget how many, let me just pull up the numbers. I forget how many Cubans were on the flight, but the Cuban government said, well, if that flight can't come with the 60 Cubans that are on the flight, nobody else is going to be able to come. And I was like, whoa, that's typical of the Cuban government, but super interesting, right? So they were actually penalizing Caymanians from being able to travel. Let me just see if I can find this article again, just to refresh your memory of when this was. So, it's just amazing that Air Jamaica said, nope, we're not going to take Cubans, and made this declaration. I don't even think they gave, the problem was they didn't really give, let me see here if I can find it. they didn't really give Cayman Airways any notice. And so as a result of that, yeah, this was January 28th. So as a result of that decision, Cuba then said that no one could essentially, uh, you know, come in on that flight. So 91 passengers from Havana, Cuba had been returned, what they call in the airline business returned ferry, which means that no passengers were on board after Jamaica refused to accept the Cuban passengers. So CMR broke this story at the time. KX 832, which departed from Grand Cayman, destined for Havana, left. And the Jamaican nationals said, not so quickly. And so they refused them entrance. But then the Cuban government, which I think of the 91 passengers, some of those included Caymanians. So it wasn't just a flight full of Cuban residents, but the Cuban government basically said that, well, if this plane can't leave with our people, this outbound flight, then it will not leave with anyone. So people were actually stuck in Cuba, Caymanians. Hmm. So I know that the national airline and the government here was working as quickly as possible to try to get this matter resolved, because this is such an unusual situation. And of course, when you travel, nobody travels with the intent of getting stuck in another person's country, right? You're hoping that your return flight is going to be something that you can get sorted out in short order. And in fact, in this particular instance, it was a bit of um, created a bit of a situation. So, folks, bottom line is Cubans are leaving in droves, not just to Cayman, but to the United States as well. So we can continue to see our numbers increase. I think we need to have a conversation about what, if anything, the Cayman Islands can do. I don't suspect, because we are a party to international negotiations, that we will have, a whole lot of say in any of this. But I do have to wonder, and this is probably a question for Mr. Franz Manderson, if we can't work at repatriation a little bit quicker, because one of the issues that appears to occur is that we have people here who come in and their processing literally takes years. And I think that that's a bit of an unfair position, not just for them, although maybe they don't mind it, but it's certainly an unfair position for the people of the Cayman Islands who have to foot the bill for these individuals in interim. And someone said to me recently, Sandy, can you FOI? How much are we paying? And this is a good FOI. I'm not huge in FOI, but this would be a good one. How much are we actually paying to house all the Cubans that we have here? And what does that financially look like for us? And I can tell you that you know it is a lot of money, because they put them up in housing. We do put them, they're not considered prisoners if they're here for immigration purposes, but we do geo-track them. We see in the past that they've removed their geo-tracking and they've left. They've stolen a boat and they've left the jurisdiction for, I guess, better living conditions than they were getting in Cayman. But we saw one a few months ago that was involved in a head-on collision in one of the eastern districts, almost killing a young lady because he wasn't supposed to be driving. I don't know who he got the vehicle from, doesn't have a driver's license, doesn't know anything about Cayman roads, but yet took the irresponsible decision to get behind the car of a wheel, intoxicated no less, and ran into a young lady and near killed her. So, there are questions to be asked. Somebody just said, wonder what kind of sunscreen they're using, because honestly, they do not look like a group of people who've been out on the waters for any amount of time. So we cover rent, food, phone calls, light, water, the whole works, says this person. The Cayman Islands government has gone too far to make these Cubans live in the public without any ID. So again, this is the other bizarre thing. A lot of them do arrive here with not a single bit of documentation, or as one other person has suggested, They come with documentation that has been fabricated. And how are we going to verify it? I mean, let's just be honest here. We can barely verify the ones that have one or two real pieces of ID, right? So, how do we know that these individuals are who they claim to be? They could be anybody. And I am most certain that we're getting a lot of undesirables. As I have said, we at least have a few already here who've commandeered a Panamanian ship to the point where the Panamanian ship was going to blow them out of the water if our RCIPS were not able to take them off. Listen, the boat owner of that vessel, first of all, they regretted picking those people up. Let me tell you. I mean, who picks up good-hearted people pick you up out in the open waters because you're in trouble, and then you commandeer the ship, you allegedly threaten the staff and all this stuff. No consequences to date, by the way. Nothing has ever happened as a result of that. And these people had a shipment to deliver, and they lost their spot in the Panama Canal as a result of this commandeering of their ship, which is like probably $50,000-$60,000 that they have to pay in fees when that happens. And I'm sure we ended up paying that. So the real question is, how much is all of this kind of a fiasco costing us? And is there not a better solution to it? You guys let me know what you're thinking. 936 Bobo is the number. So we are covering a lot of things for them. One person says, here's my theory on the Cuban refugees. Sanctions are always intended to be punishment for countries starting war, communist regimes, and those things. But in my honest opinion, the sanctions that still are held on Cuba are to keep Cuban nationals crippled in Cuba. Cuba is still very much an untapped, untouched tourism destination, and I believe partly so that they don't suffer any financial losses. Mm. Well, I mean, listen, the Europeans love Cuba as a tourism destination. So I don't know how untapped it is. Maybe for the US, who has travel restrictions in place, which the Obama administration did start to ease up on, but potentially those individuals might not be able to get in. Obviously, many other countries regionally, you can fly in and out of Cuba very, very easily, including the Cayman Islands. A lot of Caymanians go on these sex cruises or whatever you want to call them, sexcapades, to Cuba all the time. So it's a huge destination for us. A lot of the flights going in and out of Cuba, especially in holiday weekends, are packed to capacity. And you all know what you're going there for. It's not really the Cuban culture or history, it's something else. But so I don't know how much the Cuban and I think even Americans who really want to go into Cuba, as they say, where there's a will, there's a way, right? So I'm not sure if it's linked to tourism. The Cuban regime, the Cuban government has been in place. It's a communist government. They have been in place for quite some time now under Castro, initially Fidel Castro, and now his brother. And quite interestingly enough, when the Soviet Union fell, because remember, the Soviets provided a lot of support to Cuba, and when the Soviet Union fell, that support likewise fell away. So, of course, this led to hard economic times like the Cuban people have never seen before. And by the way, the US and Cuban officials are holding talks. It's supposed to be scheduled for, I believe, this week. Let me see here now. And I think it was last week, Thursday. They were meeting in Washington to discuss exactly what we're talking about here today, these migration concerns. And so these are the highest level formal US talks with Havana since the Biden administration took office last year. So we know that under the previous administration, I don't think that they made a lot of headway. They probably regressed incredibly. But the leading Cuban delegation included the deputy foreign minister, my apologies, Carlos Fernandez de Cosio. Um, and they were expected to meet with senior officials of the US State Department and other agencies. So the position of the US is that they want Cuba to take back more deportees from among the record numbers of Cubans arriving on the US Mexican border. And again, someone spoke to the Guardian newspaper about this uh, anonymously, because, the official sources aren't saying anything. So, Cuba's position is they support legal, orderly, and safe migration, and they blame the US for the uptick in irregular migration, saying that Cold War era sanctions and a decision to close the American consular section in Havana, which we were just talking about, have encouraged Cubans to seek riskier routes to get off the island. And of course, I gotta be honest with you. Cuba doesn't care. The Cuban government doesn't care about migration and who's leaving Cuba. That's less mouths for them to have to feed. Um, so I think that their position is interesting. They would be happy for the US to take all of their people that want to leave, right? So we'll see if anything of interest comes out of the talks that just happened late last week. Um, but here you even have people who are selling their homes. And so people have something in Cuba and they're selling what little they do have in order to get and book that flight to Nicaragua, which, is a close regional ally of Cuba. Why don't they just stay in Nicaragua then? Hmm. So again, the US appears to be where they eventually want to go for many people. Um Yes. So again, unfortunately, Donald Trump undid some of the positive moves that the Obama administration had put in place. So this is the first migration talks in some 4 years. You can check it out, folks. Foreignpolicy.com also posted something just 4 days ago. So they're arriving here in the Cayman Islands. People are concerned. They're thinking that there's more to this, that human trafficking might be involved. Again, allegations that they are not being properly vetted, or they can't be properly vetted by the authorities here in the Cayman Islands, because we accept whatever documentation on the face of it that they provide, and who you're going to be checking with and verifying this in Cuba, right? So it is interesting. We do have a board that deals with. There's an asylum board. I don't know if that's the full name of it, but there is an asylum board, and it's chaired by former attorney Lorna Hansen, and their remit, as far as I understand, is to ensure that anyone who does apply for political asylum is treated in the most humane manner possible, because we do have to follow, of course, international standards when it comes to just human rights. So that's their remit. And one of the large issues here in the Cayman Islands is the fact that when persons apply for political asylum, it has been taking a really long time. And that's unfair, I think, to everyone. So someone makes an observation about that. They say they apply for asylum and the process has taken months, if not years, because they get refused internally, and the appeals tribunal section takes months and months to schedule a hearing. So the Cubans remain in Cayman, free from any type of control. They're roaming, working, driving, and doing anything illegal without any repercussions, because it is being swept under the rug. Hmm. So, wow, that's not good. I think we need an expedited way of dealing with these things. Wow. Here's another person who's written in that says, "Good morning, Sandra. This is this is too much with the Cubans, and the country cannot afford this anymore. America is a bigger country and they can't afford it. So why Cayman? I don't want to say this, but there is a Cuban that recently got asylum, Amari Fluites. He's the one that has been calling them from here and advised them on how to come. He told them, so this is now what people, I'm now just seeing this message, but this is certainly what other people have said in terms of what observations they have made, right? So this is very detailed. This one says he told them that it is easy over here because there will only be 1 month at the detention center. Government will get everything for them, rent and food, and they can still come and work. After immigration denied the asylum, they appealed it to the IAT, that's the Immigration Appeals Tribunal, and it takes years to make a decision, which is causing millions of dollars to this government. Mm-mm-mm. What a mess. Jeez, I'm beast. Is this for real? Well, I'm gonna show you guys this because I'm certainly not making it up here, folks. Wow, this is shocking. So I'm gonna just show you guys this because y'all might be like, I don't know, Sandy's just making this stuff up. Chill. What a mess. Mm-mm-mm. So the commenter continues. After immigration denied the asylum right, they appeal and it takes years to make a decision, which is causing cause I think they might say costing millions of dollars to this government. There's no reason at all for the IAT to take so long to decide on the asylum applications. This is too much now. Furthermore, CIG is not requesting information from the Cuban government in regard to their criminal records. And once again, folks, this is something that I have heard over and over again, that we are allowing criminal elements into this country because they're either falsifying documents, which cannot or we're not verifying. And so, as a result of that, we are certainly not getting the most desirable individuals. Wow. This is, again, not a good situation. All right, let me see here if I can show you guys what else this person said, because it is very, very interesting. Let me see here. Okay, so that's certainly an interesting observation. And the person goes on to then say, let me just pull this up here. The person goes on to say that there's no reason, right? So this is Amari Flatus, the one that been calling from here and advising them to come. A lady that was in the Panamanian boat that they kidnapped a few years ago. She is one of them that he brought here, and she should be his wife here, but she rejected him when he arrives. Private information, please. Okay. Well, normally when you send it on the show and I'm reading it live, it's a bit challenging to pull out bits and pieces that might be private. One of the questions CBC and immigration should ask them in the interview is who's telling them to come here? But are they even going to admit it? They're using Cayman as a bridge to go to America. This is not allowed in the MOU. Asylum can be revoked as well, and they know this, but government not doing it. Amari was with Javier, and Javier, as we know, is quite the character, my dear. He's the one who's always in the forefront with a lot of foolishness. In several occasions, protesting at the government building. Yes, I remember him. So, very, very interesting. And the police have claimed that they can't even find Javier because we know that they're looking for him in relation to a complaint against him, and they claim that they can't even locate him. So it does make you wonder. Um, so yes. All right, folks. Mm-mm-mm. Someone else says the Cubans are costing us more than COVID-19. There's a difference between political and economic refugees. They only want to move on to the US. Cayman is afraid that if they tighten up on the Cubans, that Cuban government will refuse to allow the KX to overlay. Um, yes, I suppose that's entirely, maybe that's a reason. I don't know. This is where probably France Manderson um, can answer that question, right? So someone else says, whatever happened to the Cuban doctor who got political asylum and went on a hunger strike on the old glasshouse lawn? I haven't heard or seen him in about 10 years. As far as I know, he has actually left the jurisdiction. He eventually got to the US. So he's long gone. 936-2626, folks. What do you guys make of this? Do you think that there is something afoot here in relation to the Cuban nationals who are coming to the Cayman Islands? Is this more of an organized effort than we recognize? Is our government handling the situation as effectively as possible? So Miss Sue says on Facebook, "Good morning, Sandy. They look better than some of our young men here." Mm-mm. What a mess. Um, Magdalene says, remember the guy caught by CBC leaving with about $10,000 in cash? He was granted political asylum and he was an NAU only in the Cayman Islands. Yes, he claims that he can't work because of some medical condition, so he relies on the government. He has been here, I understand, for quite some time, but the interesting thing about him is despite him claiming that he can't work, he sure as heck can be up and down between Cayman and Cuba, illegally carrying money and other goods to Cuban people from this jurisdiction. And a lot of times I understand that he can be observed at the airport begging people to carry packages for him because he is so overloaded. And he makes some money on that. So for every $100 that he sends, I'm trying to remember the amount I was told, but he takes a percentage um, of that money, and he charges you a fee. So yes, quite interesting. So let me just see here now. Someone told me what the exact amount is. I can't remember. But he's literally taking thousands of dollars into Cuba, and I don't know how the Cuban government is allowing that to happen, cash, because that certainly circumvents, I'm sure, all of their processes. And I also don't know how the Cayman Islands government is allowing him to do that on our national airline because it raises a lot of questions. I mean, we don't know what funds are potentially commingling. Is he really helping the Cuban people, or are we looking at some illegal funds also leaving this country? You would have no way of knowing because there's no declaration of that money, and there's certainly no source of funds. It's not going through any sort of proper checks and balances or protocols. So again, we are opening ourselves up to being put in all sorts of lists for this type of behavior. What a mess. Mm-mm-mm. But yeah, I mean, people feel away because they're like, that's the only way that I can get money to Cuba, in as cheap as I guess manner as possible. Hmm. Um, Let me just see what else we had in terms of that. Anyway, we'll continue to keep an eye on the Cuban situation. It would be interesting. I'd like the government to make an official statement about this because the numbers are definitely increasing. 29 people in the space of 2.5 days is a lot. And so, I look forward to hearing what's the plan. Do we have a plan? Can we expedite a repatriation? And remember now, the repatriation process happens on our dime. So Emma says doctors, teachers, and essential workers can't even get a visa to visit another country because the country knows there's a possibility of them not coming back. And if they're repatriated, they will go to jail. What we get are coming to try to get employment and help their starving families back home. There are places in Havana that haven't had water for a month now. They're the ungrateful ones, just like here in Cayman. But how do we determine who is and who isn't upon arrival, upon initial meeting? It is difficult, because like I said, I'm very, very sympathetic towards the plight of the Cuban people who are really suffering because of their government. But as is often the case, when the people are unhappy with the government and the government is making you suffer, you, the people, have to be the ones to make a move. It's nearly impossible for some foreign entity um, to make that move for you. You know, just like Russia. The Russian people are going to be suffering. I saw something like over 8,000 luxury vehicles are being held in, I forget which country it is now, but basically they cannot get to Russia because of the Russian sanctions. And so at some point, whether it's the oligarchs or whoever else, they're going to have to be the ones, folks, to step up to the plate and say to Putin that enough is enough. So, every time I pronounce his name now, I got to tell you guys something. I spoke to Marilyn over the weekend. You guys know she's in Miami, and she said to me, "Sandy, you drive me crazy with your pronunciation of two words, and they both relate to the U. So you're confusing your U's when you say Putin." So I'm going to try to get it right now, and Bermuda. So I have to, my brain has to pause now when I think about these because I've been reversing the pronunciation of the U. And I'm open to, hey, if I'm getting it wrong, I'm getting it wrong. So I was thinking to myself, you know how you always use little tricks like to help you remember how to spell certain words, how to pronounce certain things, or whatever until you kind of retrain the brain. So I was thinking, I think I said Putin, and it's actually, oh God, have I just confused myself again? Putin. I don't even know. But anyway, I've been saying it wrong. So the way now that I'm thinking of it, because she's like, I'm like, well, what word is close to it? And she says the word puta, like puta, Putin. And I said, oh, I can remember that. But the word puta isn't the nicest word in the world. So, but that's how when I think of Putin now, did I say it wrong again? I'm going to go puta, Putin so that I make sure I get it right. So I might not say puta every time, but in my head, I'm saying it so I can then say Putin correctly. What a mess. Aliano says all of these economical, social, and political backward Latin nations in this region make me sick. Lord have mercy. He clumping everybody together. America's stick may be big, but a unified coalition of trade, knowledge, and natural resources is more of the middle finger is needed. But hey, each one is caught up in their own Spanish BS. So, Aliana, your suggestion is for the Latin countries to unify against America? Okay. Miss Ruby, good morning. Watching us from Georgia. So good to see you. Miss Sue, you can't see me today because I don't know what's going on with the camera, and I don't have time to fiddle with anything else this morning. I know. Always so cute. You want to see me, right? Good morning to Miss Romelia. Irvelin says nobody will rescue them, but if there was someone else, they would be in prison. We don't have a prison big enough right now for all that, I can tell you. Sharon says if it was a Caymanian that did that, they'd be in jail by now. Oh yes, commandeer a ship. That's like I don't know. It wouldn't be treason, but it's some kind of high level. That's normally very, very serious. Beverly joining us from Florida. So good to see you, Beverly. James from Canada. Thank you guys so much. Magdalene wants to know what is wrong with the persons that are being paid by this country to do their job. Who is accountable for this? Franz Manderson, mostly, if they're civil servants. Morning, Carmely. Darlene says this needs to be taken care of. Our local grassroots Caymanians living in our own Cayman Islands, and hush about the Jamaicans that stopped the Cubans from coming to Jamaica, but Jamaicans love to be allowed into other countries, just like some years back, Cayman Islands put restrictions on the Jamaicans before they could come here, and they had to get a visa, and then they put the same restrictions on the Cayman Islands. Sandra, do Jamaicans still have to get a visa to be allowed entry? I think it was watered down significantly. So there's a lot of categories that don't need a visa, but I think some still may. I'll double check on that. But yes, speaking of Jamaicans, let's talk about them while we're on that topic. So a drug boat from Jamaica came in on, was that Friday or Saturday? And so some of the people on the drug boat have gone missing. So according to my sources, one person has been recovered, and he said that there were three others that have gone missing, and they don't know where they're at. So the Coast Guard has been out there looking for them. And at this particular stage, the Coast Guard has not made any public appeals for assistance because, number one, the water has been really rough over the weekend. So I don't think that they want to jeopardize any lives or private vessels or property in this search. And so they have been out and about. So I'm going to show you a little bit of footage that we got from them, which was posted on Saturday, of the Coast Guard again, being out on the high seas, and it looks pretty intense out there, folks. And I'll give you the update that has been provided to us as of this morning. They still don't have they still haven't recovered anyone. So this is a perilous decision, folks. If you decide to, go out on a drug boat. So the update as of Saturday or Sunday, the 24th, my apologies, yesterday, is that Cayman's Coast Guard and RCIPS search and rescue assets have resumed their search for three missing persons. Now, I feel bad for people who make this decision up to a certain point because some people say, Sandy, a lot of these people who get involved in drugs don't necessarily have a choice in Jamaica again because of the economics of it. Check this out. It is rough out there. Yeah, so that's the Coast Guard vessel. So conditions in the North Sound are slight, with wave heights between 2 and 4 feet. White caps can be seen in the North Sound as well. And at the time, this was yesterday's report, they were not seeking any assistance of private vessels, as there is a small craft warning in effect, which is encouraging boaters to exercise caution over open waters. So we are waiting this morning for an update from the Coast Guard, which we'll post here shortly once that is available. All right, folks, let's switch the conversation. We need to talk about flow. Well, my poor friends over at Flow, I don't know what they're doing, but I'm going to get, listen, the name of the show is The Cold Hard Truth. Now, y'all know I love me some Flow. They have been making vast improvements under the previous CEO, Rob. Big shout out to Rob. But now I see a bit of a regression occurring, and this concerns me. And I have had countless people from Flow calling me, messaging me, WhatsApping me. Oh Lord. I'm just like, what? Let's just take a quick little commercial break here, folks.
The Cold Hard Truth is Cayman's #1 talk show since it debuted in March 2020. According to independent research, we are the most listened to talk show in 2021, and most people prefer us to any other options on island. We tackle tough issues some days, and other times have fun and lighthearted discussions. But most importantly, the Cold Hard Truth is here for you. Thank you for your support as we continue to be the voice of the people in 2022 and beyond.
All right, folks, what's going on over at Flow? Well, here's what we know. Rob, let me try to get his full name so you guys will know who I'm talking about here. So Rob Mayo Smith has been the CEO since 2020 for the last 2 years, basically. And what I can tell you has happened is that Flow made a decision, very, very, sort of unannounced, to send Rob packing, and nobody knows why. It's bizarre because he was well liked. He was one of those people that believed in succession planning. which is Flo has not done the best job with, and we're going to talk about that here in a second. And I don't know, but he's now gone. Like they told him, boom, you're out of here for whatever reason. And he packed up very shortly and left. So he was the country manager at Cable and Wireless Communications here in the Cayman Islands. I've had the opportunity to meet him on a couple occasions when they were doing their job drive, as well as when he arrived on island, we just had an open chat about, just relations and coverage and that sort of thing. So, he was very, very open to listening to staff and to talking to people. So he got the position in February of 2020, right before the lockdown. And I think he sort of held the fort down during the time that was obviously one of the most difficult times here in the Cayman Islands in recent memory, and certainly one of the most difficult times for this organization. So here he's out after 2 years and a month. And they have put in place, they made this a big announcement on Friday that this lady is going to be taking over as CEO. Here she is. Her name is Christina Spratt. And I can tell you, I have not met a single person, not a single person, which is a bit unusual, but I have not met a single person who is like, yay, Christina's qualified and she's got the job. Everybody's like, what? Christina who? Now, I don't know Christina, but she has made a tremendous, and when I say tremendous, move up the corporate ladder. I kid you not. Now, here's where I'm confused. You have Caymanians like Danny Tatum, who have been at Flo for over 30 years. Now, the story goes that Danny has been at Flo so long that, in fact, he started with Flo when his mama used to work there in customer service or reception or something, and he used to go sit on her lap while she was working and answering the phone. So if you go to Danny's LinkedIn account, y'all know I love to do a little bit of research. He actually attended the Cable and Wireless Telecommunications College. Who knew there was such a thing? 1989 to 1994. So you do the math. 1989. What year are we in now? 2022. Let me pull out my little calculator so we can get it right. 33 years. Danny has been with Flo. And this young lady who's recent to the Cayman Islands is all of a sudden CEO. Jesus, have it make sense? Because it really not making no sense. So here's what we know about Christina. Apparently, she used to work at Logic. And I don't know where she worked before, but her Logic stint all started because of her now husband. Boy, when they talk about the fact that they can do a lot of networking, they ain't lying about that. They network a lot. So her now husband was just meeting her at the time, interested in dating her. And you know what they say about the power of not the purse, but the other P. Starts to push his weight around. So he used to be connected, my understanding is, to Logic. He was connected to, he used to work for, I think, Kirk ISS. The movement is amazing. Then he goes to Logic. He went to, before Logic, he was at, what's the one in Cayman Brac call that I think Moses Kirkernel is associated with? Let me see if I can find him. Peter Spratt is his name. But he's had a very interesting move here in the Cayman Islands as well. So he has done a number of Kirk. He was at Kirk's. Then he went to Brac Informatics. Yes. Then he jumped into Logic. And then he was over at Cable and Wireless. Every time he makes a move, he's actually director at Cable and Wireless Communications for the past 5 years now. So every time he makes a move, his then girlfriend and now wife makes a move with him. So all of a sudden, he's a director, and here she is now becoming CEO of Flow. Wow, what a move. And she was only just a senior business to what was her official title? She was basically a glorified salesperson. Now, y'all got to help me understand this. How do you go from being a glorified small business manager, and then they promoted her to Caribbean cluster, to all of a sudden in 2 years, you're the CEO of a major organization like Flow? And they have Caymanians who've been there for 30 years, 20 years plus. Where has all of the um, strategic planning been in terms of moving people up the corporate ladder? It doesn't seem to exist within the Flow organization. And I'm really, really disappointed in this because I feel like although Rob was not from the Cayman Islands, he was still doing a fantastic job. And his remit was to try to get people like Mr. Danny ready. But after 33 years, y'all mean to tell me that you don't think that Danny is ready? Come on now. This is a bunch of foolishness. I got to call it as I see it. And I do not believe that this is a good decision. Now, mind you, the decision apparently is subject to off-regs sign off. Off-reg, wake up this morning, please. Drink some Milo and look very, very closely at this application because I do not know this young lady, but the questions and the comments are she's unqualified. She has no follow through. So she talks a good talk, originally from Colombia, lived in Sunrise, Florida. Y'all know that my research is on point. Met Mr. Spratt from his travels back and forth and whatever. He brought her here practically and continued to promote her throughout the organization. Good for her. Recent PR recipient. She's done all the right things that she needed to do. She's part of the Chamber of Commerce. She's out there, working it in terms of leadership Cayman. That's fantastic. But that doesn't make you CEO material of Cayman's number one telecom company. Involved in CrossFit. When she was at Logic, I've spoken to her previous name is Christina Durango. She was corporate sales representative. That's it. And that was just literally the other day. So how you go from being corporate sales representative to, small business manager. I mean, the climb up the ladder has been substantial for her. And I mean, kudos for her. And I guess part of it is all about, female empowerment, but you got to empower people who are actually qualified to do the job. Now, I'm all for female empowerment. I love me a woman in power, and I love me a strong woman, and I love women who are extremely qualified. But if you ain't qualified, you ain't qualified. And nobody can tell me, and I don't care who you are or where you come from, that she is more qualified than Danny Tatum, who has been in the business for 33 years. Okay? Talk to people at Flow. Nobody likes this woman. Now, listen, it's not a popularity contest, but when you hear people saying that they have an issue with someone because they have no follow through on the job, that they tell you one thing and it'll be like, it'll never get done. Is that really the type of person that you want to be your CEO? I kind of don't think so. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I don't think so. Mm-mm-mm. Whether it's planning an event, this is what the talk is. Whether it's planning an event or anything else, she just doesn't follow through and has no leadership skills. All right. Communication skills. A lot of the staff have shared that they feel bullied by this woman, that she will say things and do things that in any other corporate environment would be considered bullying. And yet nothing has happened. She's able to sail on through. Wow. I don't know in corporate Cayman how these things are allowed to continue to happen. But we sit here every single day and we talk about government and we have certain expectations of government. Well, organizations, we also have an expectation of you, especially when, we're giving you our money. A lot of us really appreciate Flow. You appreciate the nice, fast internet and whatever, but we also want them to support Caymanians and promote qualified Caymanians over unqualified recent PR recipients. Hmm. Now, I was speaking to someone last night about this, and they said, "Well, I hear that they're gonna give Danny something." What do you mean by give Danny something? This isn't a consolation prize. I'm not in the business of giving Danny something just to keep him quiet and not have him write a letter to Offreg, which he should be doing right now if he had any sense. That's not what this is. This is about who's the most qualified for the job. And I'm telling you, Danny might not be the most qualified in the entire world, but when it comes to him versus Christina, without a doubt, he's more qualified. And he's a Caymanian. Danny doesn't go around bullying people. I've never heard anybody say that he bullies them. I don't know why Flo has never given him, he's acted as interim country manager before. Why have you guys not given Danny this position? You've had 33 years of training the man. Surely you could send him to some sort of leadership course, whatever you think it is that he's lacking. Is it because his BS-omometer isn't working very well? He doesn't talk the best talk, but he still gets stuff done? Is that what this is? Well, I can assure you that talking a good talk is a small portion of it. It's a question of, can you deliver? I hear staff members saying how this woman will sit in a meeting and downgrade local businesses, even when she's planning an event. Oh, well, we don't want this local business there, or that local business. We don't care about their business. And those people are spending money just like everybody else. And it's a lot harder for small businesses to find the money for their corporate services and their internet and whatever else. And yet she ices them out because she only wants the big companies, right? The big law firms and the big conglomerates. Well, Flo needs to look at their digits and look at some hardcore numbers because, in fact, there are more small businesses in this country than the big businesses. And when you compile all of the small businesses together, all the little coffee shops and mom and pop shops and whatever else, they're the ones who bring you the lion's share of your money. But who would sit in any sort of a corporate event or even a staff meeting and make those type of derogatory comments about your customers? Well, who? Christina. You see, Danny got better sense than that because he knows every little penny that goes into the pot, right, helps pay the bills, even at Flow, helps to pay your staff. How can you put someone in a CEO position who has such a bad rapport with their staff and such a bad, poor communication skills? So when this big announcement dropped on Friday, I heard that everybody's mouth dropped open and they were like, who? No, sir. The staff couldn't believe it. I had former staff members from Flow calling me last night, all the way from Timbuktu, another country, and they're like, Sandy, you hear what's going on at Flow? And I said, yes, honey child, I heard. I heard people calling me from Logic. Oh my God, we didn't like her over here. We were glad when she went to Flow, but now she's going to be CEO of Flow. Are you kidding me? They said, Sandy, I need to pull out her resume because I think I might still have it. This was one of those situations where the now husband was pushing her on Logic. This is what people do. Networking. But Caymanians don't seem to have this kind of luck. We don't get the networking like this. I'm sorry to say, but this is where in my mind Caymanians really need to shape up. Because most of the time, you guys are allowing people to ice you out. You're allowing people to use you to hold down your own Caymanians. And instead, you're promoting everybody else. How can that be? And then the other people, they're the ones who are here like, oh yeah, I'm going to be helping my mummy, my daddy, the dog, the hamster. Everybody come to the Cayman Islands and everybody can get a job and get promoted very, very quickly and go from corporate sales to CEO in 2 years. I mean, slap me bald headed, but something is wrong here. The quick succession up the corporate ladder for someone who everybody's like, how did this happen? Does make me pause. And I want to be very clear. I do not know this one from the man in the moon. And in a matter of principle, it doesn't matter if I know you or not. I am listening to what the streets are saying. 936, folks, 2626 is the number. Anybody want to weigh in on this? At some point, I think we need to say enough is enough. And Danny needs to be given an opportunity. He has been acting in the position before. Flo certainly didn't fall apart while he was acting. Magdalene, she having a little laugh. Darlene says maybe all you have to do is open up and whine your way up the ladder. Laughing out loud. Well, I don't know what kind of whining going on there, but Danny and I into that. Leanne says Danny deserved that. Magdalene says the business staffing plan board, where are they? Well, I don't know if these decisions even go to them because as a telecom, they had to submit these high-ranking decisions to OFREG, and I think that OFREG is the one who ultimately will sign off on this. OFREG has kept a close eye on Flo before because, listen, Flo can be shady when they're ready, and this is the truth. We have seen them put people in a position before who, for all intents and purposes, was country manager and acting, and they were calling them something else. They were hiding. I try to remember what year this was. This might have been just when CMR was getting started, but they were hiding all sorts of HR documents, right? Now I'm telling y'all facts. These are facts that I know. They were hiding all kind of HR documents. When they knew OFREG was coming in and labor was coming in to do an inspection, they started shredding stuff. They were instructing HR, shred this, shred that. They were up to no good. So Flo has a history internally of mistreating their staff, of giving certain people preferential treatment. And again, it's hardly ever the Caymanians, but the Caymanians are the ones who are sitting there doing the shredding on their behalf. I would be like, who? Me? Shred well. Not today, Bobo. I ain't shredding nothing for y'all. You should have been doing the right thing. So when they're not doing the right thing and they know inspectors are coming, they start to shape up. Oh, let's delete emails. Let's start hiding this and hiding that. OFREG, I hope you're listening because OFREG knows of their previous breaches where they had people working here claiming to be in one position, but yet their titles, and I pointed it out to OFREG one time too when I got an email. It said, old country manager, CEO. Oh no, he was doing that on his own. Yeah, right. He was doing that and acting in that capacity because that's what y'all had him down as. But yet shortchanging the system and having him operate under totally different work permit license. So when I see this, I mean, my eyebrows are raised. Morna says things like this pisses me off. Well, me too. Gabby says they claim that Caymanians don't like to work, but a lot of Caymanians are very dedicated to their job. Over 30 years in one place. Wow. And trust me when I tell you that Danny he's a diehard Flo employee. He's ride or die with Flo. And so it is really, really disappointing to see that once again, he's getting passed over, and not just passed over, but passed over for someone who is less qualified according to everybody who's in the know. So what's the issue? Marshall says these positions are never for qualified Caymanians. It's such a shame, but this has been going on for far too long. Well, I'm really going to ask Flo. I don't know who the person is that made this decision. I understand that the regional manager is a lady by the name of Susanna. And let me see if I can get her last name now. Susanna A lot of people have a lot of respect for you before this decision. So, let me tell you what her name is now. Susanna. Mhm. Hold on now. Reading my notes. Susanna. Mm, uh, oh gosh. Oh, O'Donnell? O'Sullivan. My apologies. Susanna O'Sullivan. If you're the person who made this decision, I think you need to really start to talk to some of the people in your organization. Because if they're going to be honest with you, and workers, this is where you need to be honest now. Don't just be calling CMR and talking. You need to let Susanna know that the last person you want in the position is Christina Spratt. Hmm, She barely doing her job that she's in right now. Mm-mm-mm. Samoya says Caymanians need to pay attention and support companies that have Caymanians, not only the bottom, but in the top ranks. We need to start putting our money where our Caymanians are. Darlene says every other nationality got it locked in our Cayman Islands over our locals. This is not strange. It's happening in our Cayman Islands, wife and husband thing. Look at our Cayman Islands Dubai Expo. Well, first of all, I don't know that that's a good example because the Dubai Expo is actually two Caymanians. And I have no qualms with believing that Andrea Famo and Ali Famo, they didn't do anything wrong. Their questions about what the previous government did in terms of exerting power over the civil service, which, as you know, at least one or two members of this current government was trying that foolishness, and the premier had to step in and say, "Oh no, you don't. Mm-mm. That's the kind of thing that will get you suspended as a minister and will also put you in a position where you know you're going to lose a ministry if you're not careful." Yes. So that's a very different situation. Leanne says not only who's qualified for the job, but who has Caymanian's best interests at heart, and that would be Danny. Well, this is also another concern because I think people know that the allegation in any event is that Christina cannot be trusted. Now, it's interesting when you think about CEOs because you would certainly hope that they are the type of people that employees feel comfortable with, that they can approach, that they're trustworthy, they're people of their word, you know, that they support their employees, that they're going to give the Caymanians first preference at job opportunities. And unfortunately, I hate to say it, but unless you're one of the few people who is going to go out of your way to have Christina's back, like a few did over at Logic, from what I've heard, she's not going to be looking out for you as a Caymanian, none at all. She's not going to be putting Caymanians first in that organization. And there's a lot of diehard Caymanians. I mean, we see Al Ray, he being quiet this morning, child. He's like, "Oh, Sandy, you're not getting me fired." I see individuals like him, who have been at Flow probably close to at least 25, 30 years as well. And he's a loyalist. He's a Flow loyalist. He's there to do his job. He reaches out and goes above and beyond when it comes to dealing with his customers, dealing with Flow customers on their behalf. Hmm. Mm-mm. So I'm a little bit concerned, to say the least, about this decision that just dropped on Friday. Magdalene wants to know who has the HR position at Flow. Are they looking to hire and promote Caymanians? Well, I think, again, like I said earlier, positions like that tend to be very much rubber stamping positions. They don't have no say in nothing. They're just there to CEO tells you this is who you're going to hire, this is who you're going to promote, this is what you're going to do, and you just do it. Nothing more. Good morning, Rhonda. Rhonda says, good morning, Sandra. Good show. Remember, Danny did not have the power of the P. Evidently not. What a mess. Leanne says he was one of the best superiors that I ever had and spoke nothing but motivation and inspiration into me. Are you referring to Danny or to Mr. Rob, who's a former CEO? So something is going on at Flow. Like it's very strange how quickly Rob Mayo Smith was removed. Not giving him much notice at all. We don't know why that decision happened. I would love to have been a fly on the wall, so I could hear more about that. But people got to start talking over the next couple of days, so we may get some additional insight into what happened with Rob. So I'm very, very curious. Marshall says maybe if Danny was a woman and spreading his legs, maybe he'd be in that position right now. That's just how the cookie crumbles. Well, it's so unfortunate because most of the times I'm sitting here having the opposite conversation with you guys about how men are, got each other's back and they're promoting each other. So it pains me to have to sit here and say that there are some instances where women are getting positions that are not deserving in any way, shape, or form. And it's all about who you know, who you're friends with. I don't care if it's a man or a woman. That's not how you should be getting a promotion, especially at this level. Dean Gillette says, politics, say no more. Sasha says she has PR, so it's the CSPR board that you need to look at. Well, she would have gotten PR through the husband now. Let's be very clear about how she's gotten it, because the husband has been here for a while, from when he was at Kirk ISS. And like I said, he's been through a number of companies. Now he's a director over at Flow, Cable Wireless. And I can tell you, people who are in that telecom industry and who have worked in IT can't stand him either. They're like, two undesirables got together. Whew, what a power team. What a hot mess. Marshall says 33 years is a long time to be in a company and never been given an opportunity. Like I said, they had him acting. I want to say he was acting before Rob came in. Darlene says Danny needs to come publicly and explain his situation. Well, like I said, poor Danny, he's such a loyalist to Flow. He can sit there for 45 years and then retire. These guys, especially at the top level, are not going to say much, but other people are talking. So, sorry, I don't expect Danny to say anything. But I hope to God that Off-Reg will vet this application very, very closely, and they will have private conversations with Danny and the highest of confidence to really understand once again what is happening at that organization, because it's not the first time. We've had people complaining about the leadership at Flow, and like I said, that's when all kind of paper shredding and stuff was going on. Mark says this has been going on in Cayman forever and ever and ever. Tell me in which country in the world this would happen. I will wait. Darlene says, let's start a petition. Moya says, no, I bet they're going to try and punish any employees who stand up. Well, really and truly, a lot of employees are afraid of speaking. So even when they come to meet you, I listen very, very carefully. And I hear the fear in their voices. And I can tell you that the vast majority of them are not going to say anything if they're trying to keep their job. Flo, please get it together. This is not it. I'm not impressed. And like I said, I've been riding with Flo for a minute now. I'm going to defend their service, their customer service. They got a good customer service manager. They got a good technical team. Nobody's perfect. So when they have their issues, they're on it. Now, y'all know me and the marketing manager, none of friends, because she has some kind of issue with CMR that we've not been able to put her finger on. And she's making decisions that are less than smart about their product marketing and development, but that's on them. I'm going to keep that as a separate issue here. But this decision really made me pause when I heard it. So Rhonda says, not the brains, not the looks. It must be the power of the question mark. Now, I think that the staff should go on a huge protest. We need to stop hugging every new thing that is coming here because they call us idiots of the Caribbean. And this is what we are. Raise up, Caymanians. Let's do the right thing. Protest, protest. Ms. Della says Flo saw what happened with them the last time they brought in a foreign CEO and staff from the Eastern Caribbean and got rid of their loyal staff. They lost business. Ms. Sue agrees that the staff need to take a stand and that it's so disappointing and so unfair. Well, let's see. I think a lot of them are secretly listening to the radio this morning. They're probably not even listening online, although 230 of you are, because they're like, oh, they might go back in our browser history. So they're probably listening on the airwaves, Bobo 89.1. Y'all call me after the show. Tell me if I'm wrong here on this, because I'm interested to know. 9:29 and 56 seconds, folks. That's the end of our program today. You guys have a fantabulous day. Sorry for the technical issues earlier in the program. We will be back here tomorrow morning at 7:30, bright and early. Be safe.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of The Cold Hard Truth on Bobo 89.1 FM. Cayman's #1 talk show is live weekdays from 7:30 a.m. Never miss an episode again. Watch anytime on CMR's Facebook and YouTube channels for the latest show episodes. Don't forget to follow us online on our social media channels and visit CaymanMarlRoad.com for all the latest news and community happenings.